Jimmy on the beat, boy. Jimmy on the beat, boy. Jimmy on the beat, boy.
Yo, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Gin College Podcast. I'm your host, as always, John J. II. Thank you for joining me and Cody tonight on a Thursday, the 15th of September. Cody, how are we doing today, man?
Happy to be in the booth. You know, another week of college football in the books, and it did not disappoint. We didn't expect it to, but just always surprised with some of these outcomes and ready to put them down with you.
100%, and it's exciting to be back, and it's always exciting to be, talking about college football. It's very new. The season still feels like it just started. I'm sure I'm going to be saying that, on week 8, week 9, and just because it happens so fast, everything happens so quickly, and we have to be able to be accustomed to that. But there's a lot of things that happen in week 2 that are worthy of coverage, and we're also going to touch on some games happening in week 3 coming up this weekend. Got a great slate coming up. So anything that you really saw that stood out to you in week 2 that you didn't see in week 1, or any changes just so far, so early on? Anything that you saw that was interesting?
Yeah, I think we've seen some of the better teams in the nation, at least where they're ranked now, get tested. We've seen some teams get tested, and we started off right away at noon. We'll get right into it with Alabama and Texas. This maybe could have been a night game, could have been the featured game of the night, but we got it bright and early at noon, and it did not disappoint. Honestly, thought that Alabama was going to run away with this one, and that was not the case.
Yeah, and it was kind of looking that way early on. So we'll hop right into that one. We'll talk about Alabama and the Crimson Tide as they beat the Texas Longhorns 20-19. Really a barn burner. And I say that quite a bit. I don't say that word lightly, though. This game could have went either way for a vast majority of the game. Okay, now this is just a game where it's two teams, two powerhouse teams. Now Texas, they haven't been really known as a super powerhouse FBS team as of recent history, but Alabama's been a powerhouse for the better half of a decade, if not more than that. But to see how close this game was, it was neck and neck the entire game. And we'll talk about some we'll talk about the field goals and how they detrimentally affected the Texas Longhorns. But what did you see in this game that surprised you? What did you see that confirmed your prior beliefs? Obviously, it didn't match up. The result didn't match up with the spread. But what did you see in this game that surprised you?
Yeah, a couple takeaways. First one, we hate to see Quinn Ewers goes down early on in the contest. Highly sought after quarterback there for the University of Texas, and takes a shot from Dallas Turner, Alabama defenseman, and he was flagged. Dallas Turner was on the play. I think it was roughing the passer, but Quinn Ewers out for the game. Hudson Card has to go on from there, and definitely changed the way the Texas had to run their offense, settling for those field goals like you alluded to. But I'm impressed with how they contained the Crimson Tide and the talent like Bryce Young. His Heisman capabilities were on display. We've seen it a few times. There was one play where he was almost had that Texas had it right, so it looked like he used that crazy athleticism and playmaking ability to just get the ball off in time. And it was close enough to a receiver where they could not call him for intentional grounding. So that saves 2 points, which 2 points would have made a difference in this game, like we said. And then the other part was when he escaped a sack on the game-winning drive. He escaped a sack. Again, they had him dead to rights. Look, any other quarterback in the nation might be going down, but Bryce Young escapes and then tears off a significant amount of yardage to set up the Will Reichert field goal to win the game.
Yeah,
so those are some of my takeaways from that. Yeah.
It's crazy how much Texas and the Longhorns had to depend on that kicker. That poor guy, his foot had to be getting sore. That's more reps than I've ever seen a kicker have in the entirety of a college football game, let alone any football game. And just to talk about the field goals for a second, we have it here on the screen, field goal urgency. And that's something that the Texas Longhorns displayed very clearly this past weekend against the Alabama Crimson Tide. And that's just something you can't do. Let's be honest. It's something you can't do is rely or lean on the field goal too much. Those 4th and 5s, those 4th and 2s, you're going to have to be going for those, at least 50% of them. If you find yourself getting down the field and, getting it done, your offense is getting it done. Maybe you find yourselves in a 4th down situation, but if you have an opportunity to score, at least have the opportunity to go for it. And Smitty and I actually connected on this last night on the Double Coverage Pod. We were talking about how, Russell Wilson and the Broncos, they depended on that field goal too much, especially the one at the end with the 64-yarder. And, those 50-50 plays, I respect the coaches. I've always said this. I respect coaches that go for it, regardless if they get the points or not, if they get the first down or not. In retrospect, everything's easy. You want to be able to go for everything, especially if you miss a chip shot or miss a field goal in any circumstance. But regardless, I got to see more teams that are going for it on 4th downs, especially against teams like Alabama, when you have a serious chance to knock down a number 1 seeded team and really question their chances into making it that much further, especially going down the pike with the college football playoffs still being 4 teams right now, at least for the next 2 years, it's looking like. So I got to see more out of teams like Texas, underdog teams that maybe they were once superstars in the FBS, but maybe not anymore. I got to see more tenacity. I got to see these teams going for it on 4th downs, because if they're in the ball game, if they're, crushing the spread, covering like crazy going into halftime, there's no reason they shouldn't be going for these 4th downs. So that's my 2 cents. That's my rant.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
One last bone to pick with that game. Sarkisian claims that the Texas Longhorns did not lose the game. They simply ran out of time. And we're going to take issue with that, sir. You lost the game. Alabama won. We get the message for your players. Try to boost that morale and give them a pat on the back. But you lost the game, son.
100%. The Bryce Young, Jahmyr Gibbs connection, that's going to be the best connection all year. And I think you said it perfectly when you said that, because it's an unstoppable, mechanism that you can use on offense if you're Alabama. to get yourself out of tight spots. Bryce Young is the most evasive college football quarterback I've probably ever seen in the modern era. So if you can't get him down in the backfield and you get him back towards the line of scrimmage with the ball, with space, I mean, he's going to either find an open receiver that's still running his route or trying to get open somehow, or he's going to run it himself. So you got to get this guy knocked down in the backfield, or your corners just got to be playing out of their mind to be covering these wide receivers. So it's going to be interesting to see if anyone can knock him down early enough in the season here. Let's move on. Let's talk about this Marshall Notre Dame game, 26-21, the finish. What happened in this game to bring Marcus Freeman and the Fighting Irish to an 0-2 start? What happened?
Yeah, they're riding Tyler Buchner. He's that new quarterback in there for him, and he just has not been able to establish a real rhythm with that offense. And unfortunately for him, he's not going to be able to. It looks like he's going to miss the rest of the season, and it's going to be Drew Pine's team the rest of the way. So we're going to watch how that affects the play. And yeah, they are in shambles after that loss. That's one of the worst losses in the last 30, 40 years, dating back to 95 and 96 when they were favored by 21 points against Air Force, and then 28 points against Northwestern, and they came away losing those games. So this is uncharted territory for the Fighting Irish fans, to say the least. And Marcus Freeman becomes the first Notre Dame coach to fall to 0-3 in his coaching career there. So yeah, Marshall, hats off to them. They just kept the game where it needed to be, stayed in it. It was Notre Dame didn't actually have a lead in this game until the first moments of the fourth quarter, when they finally make it 15 to. Sorry, I'm lost in my notes here, sir. Could you take over? My bad.
Yeah, and just looking at this loss, looking at it objectively, it's inexcusable for a team, that Marcus Freeman has been undertaking. Brian Kelly's gone, and that's just the truth of the matter. You got to deal with it, and you got to make it happen. You got to count on your quarterbacks, count on your depth chart. I get it, your quarterback's young, but you got to make changes. You got to have depth in your depth chart, and you got to be counting on your players, your wide receivers, tight ends, linemen, everybody. Got to be working as a unit. Notre Dame teams have worked as a unit, and they've been a serious threat to major teams over the course of the recent modern era. And we expect to see more of that. They have a culture to uphold. So looking at that, I mean, you have things you got to uphold. You got to, represent the culture, and you got to do that.
Especially after having a competitive game against Ohio State and the Buckeyes, who seem to be an elite team. At least that's what their pedigree would entail. And yeah, they were looking great this game. In the fourth quarter, retake the lead 15-12 off of Tyler Buchner, that injured quarterback. He punches in a touchdown and punches in a 2-point conversion, looking good. Ensuing drive, they allow the herd, We Are Marshall, to drive 94 yards and punch in a touchdown, retake the lead, and they never really looked back. Buchner throws a pick six on the drive after that, and you could see it on Marcus Freeman's face. He knew the writing was on the wall and that he was going to fall to 0-2. And it's going to get tough from here on out. They're going to play Cal this week. We're going to talk about that. But then, yeah, it only gets tougher. They play UNC, and no
they got
room
BYU.
For
they got BYU too.
Yeah, BYU. Yep,
so they got a tough schedule coming up. It's not going to be easy for the Fighting Irish. They got to pick themselves and dig themselves out of this hole, because they have a culture. Like I said, they have a culture to uphold. If they don't do that, then they're going to be in shambles, and they're going to be regarded as a less than capable FBS team. That's some kind of similar to what happened to the Texas Longhorns over the past few years. They just kind of fell off the map. You look at them kind of like a mid-tier FBS team, and you just don't see them being in contention for any type of playoff run or anything like that. Notre Dame, on the other hand, they still have a chance to hold on to that. So we'll see if they do it. It's going to be a heavy task, though. They got an uphill battle ahead of them. Let's move on. Let's talk about Appalachian State against Texas A&M. App State takes the dub against Texas A&M at their house. And tell me about this game. I know the coach of App State was really animated. I saw him on ESPN. I saw him on a couple different programs. he was really happy about his team, and he was just really hyping up App State. What do you have to say about this one?
Yeah, they're just coming off that heartbreaking loss to UNC where damn near 100 points were scored, and they scored a whole bunch in the fourth quarter. So really drawing off that energy, I know he was, and they used it to their advantage. And believe it or not, Texas A&M paid App State $1.5 million to come play them at Kyle Field and ultimately get upset. This was a game expected to be a lot of scoring, and that was not the case, though. 17-14, and this game also came down to field goals. Field goals are kind of a theme for week 2 of college football. A lot of field goals made a whole bunch of differences in some of these outcomes, and this was no different. But it was 7-7 in the third. Finally, Chase Bryce scores the only passing touchdown of the whole game as the App State quarterback. And next kickoff, there hadn't been any touchdowns in 24 minutes of play, and then there are 2 in less than 30 seconds. After he throws that touchdown on the ensuing kickoff, Devin Akane takes it back 95 yards to the house, and 14-14, and it comes down to a field goal. Miss a 54-yarder, the Aggies do, and it was just an atrocious field goal. It looks like that dude hasn't kicked a field goal all year long. So yeah, that's going to come down to a lot of how these games play out. And like you said, you got to punch it in. You got to go for scores. You can't leave it in the hands of these kickers, man.
Another spread crushed, man. I mean, you look at these. You look at week 1. You look at the points that were put up. You look at the amount of overs that were hit. That just tells you that Vegas is scrambling, even into week 2. That tells me they're going to keep scrambling into week 3. I mean, there's opportunities here for the bettors, but some of these games you just can't pick based on statistics, based on narratives, anything, because there's so much out of left field. You don't expect them to happen. Perfect example right here, and a perfect example with our last game with Notre Dame and Marshall. So, I mean,
I think all these games are going to cover the unders hit. Honestly, I think they all do.
Oh yeah, the unders hit happily. So I don't know what's going to happen, but these teams got to step it up, and you're going to see new teams emerge, and I think we're already starting to see that. Moving on, let's talk about Tennessee and Pitt. Tennessee takes the dub, 34-27 over Pitt in OT. What do you have to say about this game?
Yeah, we thought it was going to be Hendon Hooker versus Kevon Slovis, and Kevon Slovis, he goes out of the game in this one. A lot of quarterback injuries in week 2 as well, which is very unfortunate for the team, but it's next man up, and it's a part of the game, so you have to deal with it. So it ended up being Nick Patty for most of the game, and these quarterbacks are both just taking lickings from the Volunteer defense. I mean, it was evident on a strip sack to end the first half of Kevon Slovis, which I think is the actual play he got hurt on. And then Nick Patty, he was getting hit left and right, looking like he's hobbling on 1 foot, almost getting it done. But in the end, the Tennessee Volunteers and Hendon Hooker outshined them in OT. Hendon Hooker impressed me again this week. 27 for 42 completions, 325 yards, and 2 touchdowns, including the go-ahead touchdown in overtime to Cedric Tillman. And the Volunteers cover on the road. I thought that Pitt was going to be a little exhausted from that opener against West Virginia, and man, that's what happened.
Yeah, it was a tale of who is more experienced, who has more reps at the top of their field, and that's obviously going to be Tennessee. They start off 2-0 with this win over Pitt, and it just comes down to everything that has culminated to this point. Even past season experience, it prevailed, especially in the dying embers. So great win for Tennessee. They got the job done. They had the OT experience from the past that really brought them the dub in this game. And Pitt's got some work to do. They're a great team. I think they have some good tools, still working on some things chemistry-wise, but I think they're on their way. They just got to keep their heads up and get dialed in. Simple as that. Moving on, let's talk about Kentucky and Florida. Billy Napier was handed a reality check against Kentucky and the Wildcats, 26-16, the final score, with Kentucky winning that one away in Gainesville. What do you have to say about this one?
Unlike the last game, this is not one that was in my crystal ball. I thought that Kentucky was not going to be able to survive the trip to the swamp, but in fact they do, and they look pretty good doing it. Will Levis, we talked about him and Anthony Richardson both trying to earn some NFL looks. You know, there were some scouts at this game. Will Levis looked really good to start. Put the Wildcats on the board with a 55-yard bomb to Dane Key. And, man, you can just see the arm strength. It was very Josh Allen-esque, the way he threw that ball. It was just a gem. I've watched it a couple of times. And
I like
I know
that.
that the NFL scouts are looking at him. And
They're looking, they're licking their chops.
Gators, they made it a contest. They made it a contest, you know. From there, they go on to score 11 unanswered points and go up 16-7. But yeah, it starts unraveling a little bit to end the second half. Anthony Richardson throws an interception, and then he throws another one in the third quarter, and that one is a 65-yard house call to Keydron Smith. And yeah, the Wildcats never really looked back. And yep, you like you said, they hand Billy Napier a little reality check. I was sipping that Anthony Richardson Heisman Kool-Aid a little bit as well. I still think he's a great athlete, but that definitely shut him down right there. And just as we know, just games where you get shut down in that kind of way can really just derail your hopes. So.
I mean, I was you tell me you're drinking the Anthony Richardson Kool-Aid. I was over here, especially look back at the last podcast, I was drinking the Billy Napier Louisiana Raging Cajun Kool-Aid because I was really pulling for this Florida team, especially after they beat my Utes in week 1. I mean, that's a lot of promise to beat the Utes in the fashion they did. And I think this game right here, it proves that Kentucky is a football school and a basketball school. I guess, you look at John Calipari, what he's done over there with that program. They're starting to become a dual threat as far as being a football and basketball school. So, I mean, you look at the recent history. Was Kentucky ever a serious contender in football, or were they off the map, or am I just tripping over here?
Yeah, it's just the last, I think, 3 years that they've really been ever broke the top 25. And yeah, Mark Stoops now, though, the winningest coach at Kentucky. So,
That's true.
That kind of go. You never know any other Kentucky head coaches, so that kind of goes to, I don't know how many wins it took him to become the winningest, but
hey, either way, it's impressive.
Now they're a football school.
Now they're a football school. Put it on T-shirts, put it on hoodies, put it on crew necks, wear them around campus. Do what you got to do. But this is a hell of a win for Kentucky, and they're just going to keep rolling, starting off 2-0. They're going to be climbing through the ranks after beating 12th ranked Florida. So
definitely,
let's move on.
Starting to make them feel better after losing to the Peacocks in March Madness. So
100%.
I got to remind them of that before they get too high on our praises here, that you did lose to the Peacocks in Cinderella fashion.
That is true. Can't forget about that. Looks like they're on their way up. They're bouncing back, at least in the football way. So we'll see if they do it in basketball here come the wintertime. Moving on, let's talk about Baylor and BYU. This was a Cinderella type game. You really couldn't pick this game apart anymore. They had the line, I think, correct. Went to 2 overtimes. BYU got it at home, 26-20. And I heard some guys in the chat. They were talking about, they were having cardiac arrest almost just watching these kickers kick. And I don't know which side they were on. You really couldn't pick this game apart either way. It was anybody's game. Got to that point, and BYU came away with it. What are your takeaways here?
Yeah, man, I was really pulling for Baylor. Big Dave Aranda fan, but my biggest takeaway is he needs another quarterback. I don't know if you have to go to the bench or, you just got to scrap the whole project this year and just run the ball every damn down. But when it came down to crunch time, that was the huge difference maker. Jaron Hall from BYU impressed the hell out of me as well. 261 passing yards, passing touchdown to his favorite wide receiver, Chase Roberts, who actually threw him a pass as well on the beautiful double pass, the halfback double pass. They pulled it off, and there was a big, beautiful sea of blockers leading Jaron Hall all the way to the end zone. And anytime QB gets a receiving touchdown in the box score, that's cause for celebration. And that team's probably going to win. I'm just going to say that right there. Philly special, NFL, Super Bowl, 5 years back, man. When they hit the Philly special, I knew Tom Brady's taking a loss. So, and it's like that's a code I live by. If your quarterback scores a receiving touchdown, you're probably going to get a W.
Hey, the Kodak moment, Philly special. If you can't defend it, you're not going to be ready for it. I don't care what defense you are. I don't care how good your defense is. You're going to be dumbfounded when they score a touchdown with the quarterback. It should throw up major red flags. A lot of times, I think when you see that setup, you see a quarterback line up in the slot or wide receiver position or wide out position, you're going to think that, it's a fluke. Oh, he's not going to run a route. He's not going to catch the ball. But anything can happen nowadays. Anyone can catch the ball if they can run routes, if they can run fast, if they got pace, they're going to get down the field and catch the ball, make a play. You got to be throwing red flags up and getting back into that cover 3 defense because they're probably going to go to them, especially, they're going to try to get on that top 10 ESPN Sports Center, list. So got to watch out for it. They weren't ready for it.
Yeah. Talking about the field goals, it kind of just really brought the day home. All the field goal mishaps really culminated in this game. 2 each. We had a PAT miss from Baylor's kicker, which, a PAT make it 21-20. It's not 20-20 at the end of the game. It's a whole different ball game. And Baylor could have walked out of there with the win and not have been the 3rd team of the day in the top 10 to suffer an upset. But at the end, Jaron Hall, BYU, got it done. Moving on. Baylor sent back into at least the further depths of the top 25 for now. But I'm not positive we've seen the last of Dave Aranda. I think their rushing attack and their defense might be able to at least keep them in the top 25.
Yeah, I mean, they have the team to do it. I think they can bounce back and at least retain something in the top 25. But this is going to be a severe blow, losing to BYU and the Cougars. So, can't piece it away any more than you already have to. But you look at a bad beat, man. BYU minus 2.5. If Baylor walks out of there 21-20,
tough.
I mean, that's a bad beat. I think the worst beat is having BYU actually cover in OT. If you had Baylor, either with the points or money line, it's a bad beat no matter how you slice
I had
it.
him. I had him 3.5 or 2.5. I think it was 2.5. So I was just feeling so good. I'm like, field goal, come on, baby! And man, it's touchdown that decides it. So yeah, that was a bad beat for me for sure.
100%. So that brings us to week 3. Let's bring us to the preview of week 3. And we'll keep the story on BYU. They face Oregon, BYU plus 3.5. Now the script has been flipped, which is odd. I think after Oregon's suffered such a serious loss, but they had a huge win this past weekend in week 2. So I mean that just tells you BYU plus 3.5 after beating Baylor. A top 8 contender last year, obviously still a great team. You see him come in plus 3.5 against the Ducks and Coach Lanning, where there's still I would say there's uncertain. I wouldn't say they're in shambles, but I'd say that they're uncertain. With the Ducks coming off the win against Eastern Washington, I was putting up 70 points. I guess, do they think the script has been flipped here? Like, I know the bookies are being thrown for a loop with this spread. This is a good spread if you're betting BYU. I wouldn't take Oregon personally, but I'll let you give your piece, and then we'll give some odds here.
Yeah, at first glance, I'm salivating over the plus 3.5. I want to buy right away, but that's how I was feeling about Baylor last week. So I'm definitely gonna have to do a little bit more research. I think one of the reasons why is, believe it or not, Oregon has not lost at home for 20. They have a 20-game winning streak going on at home at Austin Stadium. So I think that factors into it. They did. It wasn't a home game when they lost to Utah last year. That was at Allegiant, so it did not count, even though they played as the home team in the Pac-12 championship. And yeah, so maybe it's that 20-game win streak that they think that gives Oregon, or the 70 points they scored against Eastern Washington. But me personally, I'm not impressed by 70 points at Eastern Washington, especially when I know they weren't pulling their starters on offense and defense, because Stan Lanning is trying to recoup and get some rhythm after that stomping by the Georgia Bulldogs in I mean, really, the question is, what Bo Nix are we going to get? He's a player we've seen lots of times at this point, and we've seen two different facets of him. We got bad Bo Nix and good Bo Nix. We've seen bad Bo Nix against Georgia Bulldogs, one of the best defenses in the country, probably similar, not as elite, but BYU is definitely going to be closer to that tier. And as far as defensive power, and he threw two interceptions and no touchdowns against Georgia. He threw 5 touchdowns and no interceptions against Eastern Washington. So what Bo Nix are we going to get? That's what it's going to come down to. But I got to ride with the Cougs after seeing what they did in Provo late Saturday night, Sunday morning.
100%, man. That's it's a tough game to pick. You could classify this as a trap game real easily. And you're looking at the quarterbacks. Bo Nix going 28 for 33, 277 passing yards. Like you just said, 5 touchdowns, 0 ints. And then you also got the dual threat over there at BYU with Jalen Hall and Chase Roberts. So you don't know what you're going to get. What kind of
Chase Roberts is his backup QB, you said? Backup QB.
Who's that? What do you mean?
Because that man had 122 yards receiving the other night. Chase Roberts?
He has a pass. He has a pass. He comes in, he runs a wildcat. He comes in, he runs a wildcat.
Oh, yeah, he threw that double pass.
Yeah. You never know. So he could have a pass. You never know. I call him a backup QB, even if he's a wide receiver. You don't know what BYU is going to do.
I was just going to say, yeah.
That was a little joke in there.
Pass, so he is a passer.
You called me out on it. You had me guess. I'm like, what? I was like, what? And then I'm like, okay, all right, that makes sense.
I just thought that maybe, yeah.
Yeah.
But
took a little too literally
there,
Coach.
The Cougs, at least I am.
No, you're right. Hey, dual threat. You got to see a dual threat through the air, and that's something you got to be ready for if you're Oregon. And hopefully they're watching film. Hopefully they're watching film of the BYU Baylor game, because they don't know they can get the Philly special real easy. They could run it multiple times on them. So they don't care that they're playing away. They don't have their home crowd, but they're going to be playing with a chip on their shoulder coming off that win in double OT against the Bears. So anything can happen. I'm saying watch out for it because it's going to be a high probability that they might throw in some wild card plays in there. This is going to be a tough one. I don't know if I can even make a pick right now. I can expect this spread to be fluctuating going into the weekend. If you had to make a hot take right now, taking the spread or the over, just betting the game, what would you pick?
Let's see here. I'm definitely going to take BYU to cover the spread opposed to the over.
Okay. Yeah, I like that. I think this is going to be a defensive matchup too. I don't think Oregon's going to lay waste to BYU like they did to Eastern Washington. But I think they're going to score some points. Give me the under. Give me the under in this game. I like the under. I think the defenses are the offenses are gonna conflict, I think, a lot, and there's gonna be some crazy things happen on defense. And I'm making a bold assumption there, but give me the under right now. I might make a pick here on the spread going into the weekend, but right now I just got to do too much. I got to do more research on this one to be able to pick.
I think we might see some bad Bo Nix appearance. I think we might see some bad Bo Nix appearances in this game.
We have no idea. We could see whatever Bo Nix it decides to show up that day. So hopefully we get what we get, and hopefully it's in our favor. So we'll leave it at that. Let's move on. Let's talk about MSU at Washington. MSU +5, over under 56.5. Similar over under. These bookies, they think that these teams are going to keep scoring points. They think they're going to come out of that rut. Obviously some teams they put up some serious points. MSU did, and Oregon did, but there's a good amount of teams too that didn't put up that many points and didn't even come close to the over. So you think there'd be some kind of, retraction back to the mean, but we're not seeing a whole lot of that. What's your takeaways from this one, just looking at it?
Yeah, neither team I have been able to get good eyes on yet this year, so I'm going to lean on you for the majority of this. But I do know, to me, just looking at it, I can't believe that MSU is the underdog being ranked 11th in the nation, and I just haven't seen anything out of Washington that's been noteworthy over the last couple of years. Michigan took care of them pretty handily at the beginning stages of their season last year when they were nowhere near what they ended up being. And I guess I'm just not really convinced that Washington is going to give Michigan State trouble. I do know maybe it's because last time they seen Mike Penix Jr. that got shut out 24-0. But besides that, I don't really see what the bookies see in this one. I might like the over because I just don't know anything about Washington State's defense, and I think that MSU might give up a touchdown or two to Washington at least. So I'm leaning towards the over. Nothing official yet, but I really like you guys' backfield. Jalen Berger, uh, dude can score from a distance. He has a long 50-yard touchdown this year, and he's doing a good job. He's no Kareem Walker the third. I mean Kenneth Walker the third, but he's doing a nice job of filling those shoes a little bit.
100%. You got Jalen Berger, Jarek Broussard in the backfield. They've accumulated 6 total touchdowns after 2 games this season, so they're a serious run game threat. Obviously, that's kind of similar to the stats that Kenneth Walker III was putting up through 2 games. So if you can get 2 guys to do what Kenneth Walker III did, as long as you can kind of interchange them, they know the offense, they know the routes, they know the plays, they know where to find the holes. They're going to do just fine as a dual threat. I think it's good to have 2 guys taking the hits that normally one guy would take. But obviously, you got to worry about Michael Penix Jr. going through the air, who has thrown for 682 yards and 6 touchdowns to start the season, which is just very impressive. And he's bringing the pass game back to Washington. So this is going to be a battle of the run game versus the pass game. Peyton Thorne going through the air. Obviously, he has those weapons, but will he utilize them, or would he rather just sit in the backfield and count on his run game to get first downs, travel down the field, and maybe throw a pass play in here and there? We don't really know. It's going to be tough, but I think if they depend too much on the run game, that Washington's really going to run away with it through the air. So this could be a tough one too. I can't pick this one apart just for the sake of it. I want to be clear. I'm not going to be violating my cardinal rule here, but I'm going to bet with my head, and I'm going to pick MSU plus 3.5 in their first away game of the year. I think they take care of business through the ground. They get it done when they have to through the air, and I think they hold Penix Jr. to a minimum as much as possible through the air, and that defense, those corners, we're really going to be counting on them. Hopefully, they have fresh legs when they play. So it's going to be a dogfight, but give me MSU plus 3.5. What do you got?
Yeah, I'm like I said, leaning towards the over. Might come out with a official pick as we get closer to game time. I think you guys are going to dominate the run game, but I think you might get exposed a few times by Penix. And unfortunately, you guys, some of your better guys in secondary, you lost them to injury. Eric Snow and Henderson as well are out, and those are 2 big guys in your guys' coverage. So I think he's going to get loose on one or strike a bomb.
He's going to look to exploit it.
The over.
He's going to look to exploit it. I think it's going to be a lot of points. Look for that over to be tested. So we'll see what happens. Moving on, let's talk about Cal at Notre Dame. Notre Dame, like we said earlier, they're desperate for a win after starting the season 0-2. They risk starting their first 0-3 season since 2007. Obviously not nullifying the bowl game with Marcus Freeman and kind of, having that transition of seasons there. What do you think about this one? Notre Dame minus 11. I think that's a little bit of a hefty spread, over under 40.5. What do you think is going to happen here?
Yeah, after failing to cover and losing to touch an underdog last week, the 11-point spread here is a little bit confusing to me. Their quarterback is supposed to be the guy. He's out for the rest of the season. I got to look to Drew Pine. So, and when he replaced Buckner after he went down late against Marshall, Pine threw himself an interception too. So he's not off to a good start and off to a good foot. And yeah, Cal, they're in the Pac-12, used to playing some tough opponents, and they're coming in 2-0, and they're ready to be where Marshall was last week. I know that they're chanting that mantra in the locker rooms. They want to channel the "We Are Marshall," the herd. They want to be the next team to upset the Irish, and unfortunately, hand one to Marcus Freeman. And I really like Cal to cover this. I think that they're going to the Irish are going to be struggling to find that offensive identity, and I don't think he's going to be able to hit his playmakers. Drew Pine's not, and yeah, he's going to have to rely on his bailout, Michael Maynard, who's a great tight end, but he's a big man. He can't break away those plays like those speedy receivers can. And I'm not feeling good about the Irish.
100%. I think you're right. Cal should cover this game. You're looking at Jack Plummer, who played at Purdue, went 51 for 74 with 546 passing yards, 4 TDs, 2 interceptions after the first 2. And he's going to be a threat. Obviously, he's played in some tough games in the Big Ten, and now he's moved to the West Coast, where he looks to continue to lay waste on teams in the Midwest and throughout the country with Cal. So I think they cover. Notre Dame's shown that they have struggled to score points, whether they're at home or away. So I think that Cal can cover, even if Notre Dame does pull off the win. I don't think they do it in a crazy, stylish fashion, winning by 20, 30 points. I just don't see it. And they're obviously going to be playing scared, don't want to go 0-3. They'd be dead in the water if they go 0-3. So they want to try to salvage their season. They're going to be playing, I think, a little bit gingerly. They might win the game, but I don't think they cover, period.
Yeah, I think the nerves play a huge part into it. The pressure, you just don't want to make that mistake. And when you're too afraid of making that mistake, that's when that mistake occurs. And, yeah, it could get ugly if Cal gets ahead early. That could be really bad for the Fighting Irish. So definitely this was a game we flexed in here, they made the cut barely. There was a couple games on the edge, but this one made it over even a top 25 matchup because just so much at stake for Marcus Freeman. Like you said earlier, going on the road against UNC, and then they got to host the Baylor Bears, and could get real ugly. That seat could get real hot there in South Bend.
100%. It really could. And you got to be worried if you're Marcus Freeman. You got to make sure you're stepping correctly. And shouts out to the GSN guys for calling these projected featured games for this weekend. We take the top 3. We're going to do that format every week going forward. We just figure it's easier to kind of build on that and see what games are coming up and cover at least 5 to 6 that happened the previous week, have a little bit of a conversation, a little bit of back and forth, and that's what we're going for over here on the GCP. So really exciting stuff, man. Looking forward to this weekend, another great slate of college football games, and it's going to be a hell of a weekend. What else you got, Cody? Any takeaways, any final statements before we sign off today?
The only thing I want to leave the nation with is no other football coach in America would not be naming J.J. McCarthy the starting quarterback or even be talking about how good Cade McNamara is, okay? It's disgusting. All right, it's pissing me off seeing him continue. We have 2 good quarterbacks. We're going to continue the battle through the – dude, knock it off. It was fun while it lasted. J.J. McCarthy, he's different, dude. And I was at the game Saturday night, and I just being honest with everybody, the whole stadium felt different, and the O-line did not look like they're even blocking for Cade. So it just came out. He bought them some ping drivers for some NIL reward for his O-line. Maybe they didn't like ping. Maybe they want some Nike or TaylorMade, bro, because they were not blocking for you. And he looked awful in that offense on Saturday night. So that's all I wanted to say. My little rant for Jim Harbaugh. Dude, get it together.
What is the state of Michigan football going forward? Can you tell me that? I mean, yeah, they're 2-0, but I mean, can they get the job done this year? That's all I'm going to ask. Can they get the job done?
It all depends if they keep playing around and don't make JJ the starting quarterback, dude. They look elite with him in there, and when he's not, they look just like last year. Like, okay, their defense is good, they win games, but yeah, I can't talk about it anymore. I'll get mad. It's JJ McCarthy, QB1 for the foreseeable future, dude. As long as he wants to be at Michigan, that's all I got to say.
That's all he's got to say. He's getting heated. Better wrap this up here quickly. We'll do our closing statements. Awesome stuff. So thank you guys again for tuning in to the GCP. Make sure to follow me on Twitter. Follow Gin Promotions on Instagram, Gin Sports Network on IG, and go to our website where it's constantly being updated with content related to the sports world, ginsportsnetwork.com, and go to our link tree, which is in the bottom of this podcast in the description. But I'll leave it at that, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in to this edition of the Gin College Podcast. I'm your host, as always, John J. II with Cody L. Massey. Have a great night.